Welcome back to USC Coliseum Chronicles. I'm Terrence Holton, joined along Casey Geisler. My hair is crazy right now. Um, Casey and I, we're gonna have to change up. We're changing up our schedules. We have very demanding things going on this summer, so I'm sorry we haven't been consistent. Once we get closer to the season, though, both of us will be on this. We'll be have a lot more shows, have a lot more things to talk about. But in the meantime, Casey, let's talk about Peyton Dyer committing to USC, cornerback in the class of 2026. What are your initial thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of interesting because we talked about USC, not recruiting from the South much, but they get a guy from Georgia. And I mean, again, if you're going to get the talent there, you might as well, especially the depth, no matter where they come from, because I know, recruiting in the backyard like is great, but if you're going to get extra bodies, why not? He's the number 35 Georgia player out of the class. I think in between a 3 and a 4-star. I think his composite rating, he's a 4-star. And he had other, offers as well, but he just seems like a really dynamic player to add to this class. He's not the biggest guy, but he's apparently really fast. So I think that's a big thing to add to your class when you're looking for that DB depth.
Yeah, totally. I mean, the cornerback class is shaping up to be really good. Just adding Dyer, obviously, it's a very solid add. Later, I believe it's July 2nd, Brandon Arrington is committing. As far as I can tell, it's pretty much down to USC and Texas A&M. Correct me if I'm wrong on that. Um,
You're right.
this is a great ad, though. I mean, we talk all the time. This class just keeps getting better, and this is grabbing someone from the South. Obviously, was it 16 people from California of the 28 or however many people they have? How many is it? They have 28 committed. Yeah, I believe 16 are from California. Adding from someone from the South, never going to complain about it. Obviously, when it's I'm going to say relatively early still in the stages because you still have a lot of time to flip those guys. That's the problem. He's right near Georgia. He has offers from Auburn teams like that. So there's always problems like that. You run into a Xavier Griffin situation. Obviously, different caliber player, but the South, it's a lot harder to recruit from, which Lincoln Riley has found out these last couple of years. But Casey, let's talk about the recruiting in general because USC obviously has been atop the number one for 2026 pretty much a year now. Chad Bowden has just added to that. So where does USC, I mean, looking at their rivals, it's just so much better. How high do you see this clash finishing for USC?
I mean, the sheer amount of players they have is going to make them in the top three no matter what happens. Like I don't see them dropping much because look, you have 28 commits, and I know stuff can happen during the season, but the reality is not that many guys are going to drop,
Mhm.
just, and if they do, if a lot of guys do, like, you still have a lot of commits, is my point. Like, we've seen mass drops before, but I just don't think it's going to happen. I mean, you look at Notre Dame, they're number 3, but that's a little bit deceiving, I feel like, because they only have 16 commits and 15 of those are 4-stars. And so they're getting good talent, but they don't have any 5-stars they can brag about. And they don't have, the security that USC has, because if, a couple guys, drop, USC is still going to be, in the top 3 probably. You look around more in the Big Ten, Penn State at number 6. Well, they only have 19 commits. Rutgers has a top 10 class. They only have 22 commits. And they have 18 3-stars. It's very deceiving. UCLA, they have 15 commits, only 5 4-stars. Like, the point I'm trying to make here, Oregon is the most surprising of them all. They only have 8 commits. Dan
Mhm.
Lanning has done an awful job this recruiting trail,
Yeah,
and is
they
losing
landed
guys.
someone today, I think, or maybe yesterday, but still, the Oregon's done terrible in this recruiting cycle. Sorry to cut you off.
No, you're good. I mean, that's pretty much it. Like, I think the amount of guys USC has and the amount of 4-stars, it really makes the other teams, even the teams that are in the top 10, look bad, because the other teams just, they don't have the depth that USC does. And we were talking about the cornerbacks. I want to go back to that just for a moment. You have Elbert Hill, you have Brandon Lockhart, you have Madden Reardon, you have Joshua Holland, and now Peyton Dyer. I think that's 5 total cornerback recruits. And then that doesn't even complete the whole defensive back list, because you have other guys as well. So that's huge. And I think the depth at that position, we didn't see it there always. And I think, like, last year, like, there were some good guys there, like Jalen Smith, and obviously Kamari Ramsey, and so like I feel like that position's getting a lot deeper as
Mhm.
we go on. So yeah.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Going back to just the recruiting as a whole, you talk about the depth. I think my one problem is it's not a problem, but 10 3-star recruits, it's a lot higher number than a lot of these other top classes, other than Penn State. They also have 10. But you want the more blue chip guys, the 4, the 5 stars. Of course, USC has 17 4-star recruits, but you need more 5-star guys because a lot of the 5 stars are uncommitted so far. So, I mean, you look at like Georgia, Clemson, I'll throw Clemson, LSU. I'm just looking at going down the list. Texas, they all have either 1 or 0 5-star commits committed right now. They're going to land at least 1 to 2 more. If I had to guess, Georgia will land at least 2 to 3 more 5-star recruits. Is that unfair? I mean, maybe not, just because of like NIL. We haven't even talked about like the house settlement, how that's going to affect USC. We can talk about that in a second. But
Yeah.
I think that a lot more players are going to. I think it's possible USC finishes first, 100%. There's still a lot of guys who will probably commit to USC. I'll throw Brandon Arrington in there, as I mentioned, even though I believe he's favored to Texas A&M right now. I think USC easily finishes with a top 3 class. Maybe I'll say minimum top 5. Is that crazy to say? Minimum top 5. You lose a couple. So I mean, a lot of it depends on the product on the field, obviously, but minimum
Yeah,
top 5. Crazy.
that's not crazy. I mean, we didn't mention Booby Feaster also, the receiver. 4-star. I think Texas A&M is leading in that race as well, but he his top 4 include USC. I think also LSU, A&M, and
Is
one or
Oregon in there?
Alabama.
Oregon's in there. Alabama? Yeah, I think you're right.
Alabama. Yeah. So, he would be a big add. I mean, they have a lot of receivers, in that class as well. So yeah, I mean, I just think those 5-star guys, I mean, it's tough that they've lost, a couple guys here and there. And I do think that the motto of, USC recruiting of like, you're either committed or you're not is big. But at the same time, you have to sometimes deal with those guys, doing other visits, and you kind of feel like you're being cheated on if you're USC. And we saw that a couple weeks ago. So yeah, I mean, I think I agree with you. I think, these other teams like Georgia and whatnot, teams that are going to make the CFP this year, USC could be in that number as well.
Mhm.
Those guys are going to get attention from those 5 stars. But can we talk about how much of a like recruiting rival Texas A&M is at this point? Like Hassan Longstreet, Jerome Miles, like Booby Feasters, and that, like, it's always USC and A&M, I feel like, for these big guys.
It is funny that Texas A&M seems to be competing with a lot of the Southern California guys. I mean, look at Brandon Arrington, he's from Spring Valley. It's weird that suddenly Mike Elko has a pipeline to Southern California. I mean, maybe it's not, but you're 100% correct. It's funny that Texas A&M is going for the Southern California guys. USC seems to be shutting down the California recruiting trail very well, though. So overall, that's going well. Going back to some of the USC's rivals on this, it's obviously early. UCLA has had a decent recruiting class so far under Deshaun Foster, which I don't really understand because I don't think he's a good coach. But they have 15 commits. They're not going to get any 5-stars, obviously. A couple 4-stars and some 3-stars, though. I do think the most surprising is Oregon. Obviously, it's early. They only have 8 commits right now, though. And, a couple weeks ago, you lose Richard Wesley after that was the weirdest video ever. Him jumping in. We haven't really talked about that. All-time troll by USC. We talked a little bit about that with the Anchorman.
Yeah.
It's so weird that they jumped in the pool and it's the strangest thing ever.
I don't get it, honestly. I mean, like, like, I understand like bonding with the coach, but it just doesn't really make sense to me, like, why you do all that and then like to decommit, the next day.
Dude, that tells me that Dan Lanning is a pushover. That's what I have to say. Because think about it. Imagine you go a couple years ago, you go on a visit to Alabama. You say, Nick Saban, I'll commit right now if you jump in this pool to me. And he'll curse you out, and then 10 hours later you commit anyways. Dan Lanning's a pushover. Let's push that. That's a narrative I want to start. How about that?
Hey, maybe you're onto something, man. Well, I mean, yeah, Oregon's class, they only have 8 commits, like you said, and like they're all. I think they have 5 4-stars and 3 3-stars, according to
Right,
247. But yeah, I mean, you look at Michigan too. They only have 9 commits after having a really good class in 25 with Bryce Underwood. So I guess it's interesting to see like how stuff changes from year to year. Alabama only has 6 total commits. I mean, I know it's not a rival, but it just goes to show that these SEC teams, even with tons of prowess, are barely scraping together guys. I mean, respect to Cal. Cal has really got a lot of guys recently. They're top 20 now. So it's
Yeah, I think. Sorry, I was just gonna mention like I don't know if you've seen like the 24/7 like the 2026 recruiter rankings. It's
yeah,
24/7's way of like ranking like specific coaches, but 3 USC guys in there. We mentioned the DBs. Doug Belk is #1 in their rankings right now. That goes to show how good this DB class is. Eric Henderson at 3, and then Zach Hansen at 8. It just shows how good a job Chad Bowden has done. It shows really the strides that this recruiting team, I'll say, has made over the last year. Because, I mean, the last 2 years, they were fine classes. Oh, what are they? 17, 18, around that range. They're fine. It's not USC standard, though. Is that crazy to say?
yeah. I mean, Eric Henderson too. Like it's.
Yeah, I said his
I mean,
name.
oh, you did? Okay, sorry. I mean, all the coaches that you mentioned like have such great experience too. Like Doug Belk is a national champion at the FCS level.
Right.
Eric Henderson coached, Aaron Donald in the Rams, who won a Super Bowl. Like it's. I feel like at USC we're seeing a commitment to getting these guys to the NFL because Oregon, like they rave about how many guys they have in the NFL, but can you name any really good Oregon wide
No,
receiver in the
no, no,
NFL?
no. Like, that's the thing. Yeah. Guys who go to Oregon for wide receiver, it doesn't make sense to me. It's just money. There is no prestige whatsoever in guys from Oregon playing receiver in the NFL. Absolutely not.
Well, my point is, like, you look at any position at USC, and I think maybe quarterback a few years ago, like pre Caleb, you could make the sort of same point that USC doesn't have good quarterbacks in the NFL. But every position at USC is getting to the NFL and is good. I mean, think about it: running backs,
Absolutely.
wide receivers, O line, D line, secondary, like every position. Like I feel like that's not a new thing per se. Maybe a little bit more in the quarterback department, just because Carson Palmer, Liner, like those were kind of older, and Darnold, didn't necessarily live up to the
Made a
expectations.
comeback. He's made a comeback.
Yeah,
Starting
sure.
with the Seahawks this year.
Yeah, sure, but that's one out of like 20 years.
Yeah.
But then you bring in Caleb, and so I think that's changed the narrative a lot. And I think at the end of the day, like these great schools, they are considered great, like Alabama, LSU, some of the bigger Big Ten teams as well. They don't necessarily have positional depth at every position in the NFL like USC does. And that's how I feel like USC is pitching to these kids. Like, we want to get you to the NFL. We also want you to win a national championship at USC. And so I feel like that is the recruiting pitch. And I mean, I'm not in the room, you're not in the room when they're making these pitches, but it's felt like through the social media and through the outreach that we have been able to see, that has been the promise.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's a lot of we'll get you to the league. I mean, we keep seeing these pictures, videos of Jakeem Stewart with Aaron Donald in the offseason. That's what you want to see. We talked about this last week, but that's what you want to see as a recruit. And you're like, oh, this guy, our coach, he coached with one of, if not the greatest defensive lineman of all time. He's going to get me to the league. Moving on from recruiting, Casey, I want to talk a little bit about win totals in the Big Ten and where USC kind of fits into that. And I'm curious, I don't know if you've seen, do you know what USC's win total is?
I have not. What is it officially?
I want you to guess. Guess first, and then I'll tell you.
I mean, I'm gonna say they have USC pretty low. Is it like an over under thing?
Yeah, over under
Okay.
something and
I'm
a
gonna
half.
say 7.5. 7.5.
Bingo. Got it straight on.
Okay.
Where do you think that is in the Big Ten, ranking wise?
I'm gonna say pretty low. I'm gonna say 8th in the Big Ten.
Not bad. Technically, it's tied for 6th with not Iowa, Illinois. Oh, it is Iowa. Excuse me, Illinois, Iowa, and Nebraska and Washington. Wow, a
Wow.
lot of 7.5. Do we think that's disrespectful?
I think it is because I just pulled it up. Iowa above USC, like I first of all, that feels pretty fraudulent to me.
Yeah.
Illinois, I know we've talked about them before, and I think that could come down to like when they play each other. But Indiana at 8.5, though. I mean, I know they just went to the CFP, but
It's
I know they
because
brought in Mendoza too. But what do you think?
Indiana, I was just saying, Indiana and Nebraska both play really easy schedules.
Yeah,
I don't know if you saw like Indiana's like non-conference. It's like Kennesaw State, Indiana State, and like some other tiny FBS school. That is why those teams have those high win totals. I think Nebraska could be the Indiana of this year that somehow sneaks into the CFP because they play nobody basically. USC, of course, could ruin that. But you know what's funny, Casey? Ohio State, Penn State, and Oregon all have over-unders of 10.5 wins. That's the highest of anyone in the country. That's higher than anyone, if I'm not mistaken, in the SEC, which I think is interesting. I think the Big Ten is better than the SEC. That's not crazy in my
I,
opinion to say.
I was going to
Right?
say the exact same thing, and I don't think it's. I think you could have said the same thing last year, honestly.
Oh
Like
yeah.
I like easily, right? I mean, Texas is really good, but the SEC was so top heavy last year. They gave a couple teams into the CFP. I mean, Georgia really wasn't that good, if we're being honest.
Mhm.
We know Alabama wasn't that good. So, and USC, I mean, went 2-0 against the SEC. So, I mean, that's proof in the pudding right there. But
Exactly.
what is that?
7-16.
I want to ask you though. The SEC, looks to be at a low point. The Big Ten is at a high point. What does that mean for college football? Like that, the conference of all conferences, the South, is kind of been dethroned. I know not many people are talking about that, but we are. So
Yeah, no, he totally has been dethroned. I can't stand personally. I can't stand ESPN's coverage of the SEC because it's incredibly biased. It's a network the conference they broadcast the most and have exclusive rights to. But it's ridiculous to me. They're overtly biased towards SEC teams. I think we've witnessed that in like the playoff and all sorts of that stuff. Alabama. I don't know if you've seen like Kalen DeBoer like complaining like if other teams played our schedule,
yeah,
then let's see how they would have done. Like talking to Indiana, it's like, all right, you lost to 6-6 Oklahoma. But whatever. Um,
Vanderbilt.
yeah, a Vanderbilt team who lost to Georgia State and a 6-6 Oklahoma team. Excuse me. I think stacking up USC against the levels of like the Big Ten, I think they're so. I think comparatively to the SEC, I'm trying to say, I think that USC would do better in the SEC. That's a lot of C's in there than they would in the Big Ten.
I
Is that
agree.
crazy to say that? I think that just the way that the Big Ten has been shifting, obviously you add Oregon, USC, Washington's going to be pretty good. I'm not putting UCLA in there. I think it's a better conference than the SEC, and I think it is shifting to taking over college football as that dominant force. It's different levels, like that. It just means more. I hate that. It does mean more in the South. They care about their football a lot, but that doesn't mean they're better at it.
I agree. I mean, the problem is the SEC is so condensed, right? Like the travel's pretty easy. Like I think the farthest north they go is Missouri, right?
Mhm.
Like South Carolina is pretty far north, all things considered, for
Yeah,
the map of
yeah,
SEC teams. So I mean, I think the travel question is like a sensitive one because I know like USC talked about that a lot, and a lot of people kind of dismissed it, but the SEC does not have to deal with crazy travel whatsoever. I mean, obviously LSU came out to play in Vegas week 1. That was the farthest they went.
yeah. But at the same time, that's like that's a
Neutral site.
non-conference neutral site. Yeah,
Yeah, exactly. That's my point. Like it's not tough at all. Whereas USC has to go, and I know Notre Dame's a non-conference game, but they have to go to the state of Indiana twice this year. They have to go to
Mhm.
Illinois. They have to go to Oregon. I mean, Oregon's West Coast, so that's not tough. But
Oregon's not a tough one. That's not a tough journey.
they have to go to Nebraska. Like it's 4 out of their 5 away games are in the Midwest, and I'm not saying that as an excuse because USC chose to join the Big Ten. They knew what they were getting. So I'm not putting the excuse for USC out there. However, I think when people look at a 9-3 USC team potentially versus a 9-3 Alabama team, I think you have to consider the fact that, first of all, the Big Ten is tougher, like we said, but also USC had a lot more travel. They had a lot more to deal with. They had a lot more tough weather to play in. I mean, the SEC weather is pretty good.
Watch on the weather, Casey. Everyone gets mad at us when we talk about the weather.
Yeah, we'll stop right there on the weather. We're not weathermen, unfortunately. But yeah, no, I mean, I agree. I think it's certainly shaking up the college football landscape. And looking at those win totals as well, I mean, some of the bottom feeders, UCLA 5.5 wins, Michigan State 5.5 wins, Northwestern 3.5, Purdue 3.5. USC is playing all four of those teams, so that's pretty nice for the schedule.
Yeah, USC plays 4 of the bottom 5 teams in total win total, so that's pretty nice. I think that overall, this might be the season to make that initial push towards the CFP. I think it's weaker in the SEC. The committee knows that. Well, we'll see if they're biased towards the SEC. They usually are. The committee knows that the Big Ten's stronger. This could be the year that we see a 4 or 5 bid Big Ten. I'll say Penn State, Oregon, Ohio State, Michigan, USC. Maybe not Michigan. I don't know about Michigan. Maybe
that 4th spot's maybe a toss-up with because I mean, do you think Nebraska could make a push?
100%. I've trashed on Dylan Raiola a lot, but let me pull up their schedule.
Yeah, I mean, he was only a freshman last year. I just think it's weird, like seeing, Indiana, Illinois, and Iowa. Those 3 teams. I mean, I know they all 3 had great seasons last year, all things considered. Maybe not great. Iowa lost Caleb Johnson, who's one of the best running backs in the country. Illinois is still going to be good, but they're really as good as Luke Altmaier is, right? Like they'll go as far as his ceiling is. And then with Indiana, I mean, you're bringing in Fernando Mendoza, who seems to be a great quarterback, but I mean, is he that much better than Curtis Rourke? I mean,
no, not at all. I thought Curtis Rourke was very fine. I thought that Illinois team was a lot better than them last year, than Indiana, that is. I'm just looking at Nebraska's schedule. I think this team could potentially sneak into the CFP. If you they play Michigan and USC at home. Their hardest game is at Penn State. That's a tough one. I don't think they'll beat USC and Michigan. Hypothetically, you do. I think you're in because nothing else on this schedule jumps out as really that difficult. Nothing else here is really difficult. Their non-conferences: Cincinnati, Akron, and HCU. I'm actually Houston
Holy
Christian.
Cross. Oh, I thought it was Holy Cross.
No, not Holy Cross.
Yeah.
I know the Crusaders logo any day, Casey. I think 8.5 is fine for Nebraska. I would set USC's line at 8.5. I think that's a little tough because obviously Michigan, Oregon, Notre Dame, Illinois. So that's tough, but I would probably favor them over Michigan and Illinois. We've talked about it before. Yeah, I don't know. We need to improve players. Completely agree with this. Our play on the road. Yeah. We've talked about this before, and people have jumped down our throats when we talked about just playing on the road. And Lincoln Riley can't do it because he can't. It's just a fact. I just look at last year; they couldn't win on the road. The only road win was UCLA. Is that? Am I?
Yeah, that's correct.
Right? Yeah. And that's 10 miles that way. So that's 10, 15, whatever. They need to improve on the road. They need to get better. They need to actually be able to play in the Midwest. And I'm not going to say the weather.
They won more games in Vegas than they did on the road.
Yeah, they did, didn't they? And that's barely on the road. That's once again right over there. It's not that far.
I mean, I think the disrespect that we're seeing here in the rankings, and I don't even know if we consider it disrespect, but the lower ranking that we're seeing is simply because of Lincoln Riley. He's the fact. It's nothing to do with the players. It's simply because of Lincoln Riley not being able to prove himself yet at USC. He's proven himself as a recruiter, great, but I think we're seeing sort of like the Andy Enfield to relate to USC basketball, where he just cannot really close the deal. He can get the good players, but we're not really seeing results in the postseason. So that's going to be huge for him going forward.
Yeah, when Lincoln Riley doesn't have a Heisman quarterback, he's just like a generational number one pick quarterback. His teams haven't been that good. That's just the reality. You need to have a good team, regardless if your quarterback is not just some generational talent. I mean, look at Miller Moss, Jaden Mayava. They're not going to go number one overall, and we've seen USC kind of struggle with that. I did see a clip of Urban Meyer on Colin Cowherd's show trashing Lincoln Riley, talking about how if you went 8-5 at Ohio State, you'd be fired.
I saw that.
I don't want to say it's different standards, but it's like at the same time, there's so many things I want to say to Urban Meyer that I don't think I should say on live on a show. But I think he's not incorrect is the problem,
Well,
like
the standard's a little different because Ohio State has been, first of all, they won the national championship last year. They've been in national championship games this last decade. They also have been in the Big Ten for as long as time. And USC, not that the Pac-12 is like, a bad division by any means. No, it's not. It's nowhere near close to the Big Ten. So, I mean, USC is going to take time to adjust. I think, 2 years from now, if Lincoln Riley's still going 8-5, that's a conversation we could bring up. But I feel like after
I
one
think
year in the
this year, if he goes 8-5, it's a conversation we should bring up.
Sure.
I've been on the Lincoln Riley fire train for a while now. Maybe it's a little maybe it's like a preemptive strike, but I have been against him for a while now because personally, I lost all faith in him when it came to just his general play calling last year. It was dull, it was boring, nothing was going on.
Yeah. I mean, I have a question for you because I do agree with that. If USC meets that 7, let's say they win 7 games, they're just mid again. They don't make the CFP. Do you fire Lincoln knowing how good the 2026 class is?
No, unfortunately, you don't. It's one of the things like you have to give it another year. The problem is football is one of those sports where there's a learning curve. Like those guys, all those 2026 guys aren't going to contribute immediately. Some of them will, but not all of them will, of course. I do, of course, I think USC goes. I've been pretty adamant about this. I think they go 9-3 this year, 10-2 maybe, 10-2 and they make the playoff, but 9-2, 9-3, excuse me. And you keep Lincoln Riley, and you start to see that progression go up. You start to see like, okay, there's something actually building here because unfortunately, it's peaked so far at year one Lincoln Riley, where they gave up 40 points a game but scored 50 a game. So there was that, and that was fun, but that's not sustainable, obviously.
Yeah, and I mean, it'll be interesting too because in 2026, like assuming everything goes well, like you have a redshirt freshman year from Hassan Longstreet,
Right.
And then a bunch of young guys, and then you bring in some guys from the portal, but we're seeing after this year, like USC does not have a ton of veterans on the team. Like you have a kind of a lot of like you have younger veterans, I'll call them, guys who haven't played that much, or guys who haven't been at USC that long but have played quite a bit. Like Elijah Page could be considered one of them. Guys like that. But
Right.
I think in 2026, like obviously stuff will happen in the portal, but it's going to be an interesting year for USC because you would think it would be like a transition year because Mayava will be gone probably, and a lot of guys will be gone. But at the same time, like you'll have brand new regime kind of coming in, and not coaching wise, obviously, but on the field you'll have what feels like kind of a new direction for USC football, like finally a class that they can be proud of with a quarterback that hopefully lives up to expectations. 5-star QB, one of the best in his class. Yeah, I mean, maybe want to highlight this.
Yeah, I was just waiting for you to finish.
Yeah.
Completely agree, Archer. Quick, because last season all I kept seeing was like 3rd and long bubble screen, and it was just the most infuriating thing ever. And just like the lack of running, obviously. I'm really hoping this is true because we're paying him $100 million so that he can be this offensive guru that we thought he was at Oklahoma. So, or that he was at Oklahoma. Not say thought he was, because he was. So I'm praying that you are correct in that standard.
I mean, he said it himself. Like bringing in a guy like Chad Bowden and having extra recruiting help from the other coaches, like has been like night and day. From what it once was. Like instead of having to talk to a recruit, for 3 hours to get a read on who he is, Bowden's done all that.
Mhm.
Like all Lincoln has to do is kind of console with Chad and make sure the guy's legit, and then they're a USC Trojan. Like it's that simple. Whereas before, it was so much more, yeah. I mean, it was complicated, and so I mean, on that topic, maybe talk a little bit for a few minutes or so before we
Yeah.
wrap up NIL. Anything you wanted to add just about the house settlement?
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. It's really good for USC. That's what I will say, because Casey, our tuition is now just directly going to USC football. I hope you know that. Which could be worse. This school could go belly up in 100 years, but if we win 2 national titles in my lifetime, that is worth it.
Only two.
2, yeah, probably more. But I'll take 2. You know me, my teams never win. You're different. You're accustomed to more winning, as you can see in the background of some of your stuff there. It's crazy. I saw UCLA and some other school already signed deals with like massive like hedge fund corporation type stuff. USC needs to get on that so that they can just start directly paying as much money as possible. Give me a national championship. Obviously, I won't be here after next year, but you will. Maybe your senior year, that's when they start to make that push towards the national title. It evens the playing field. It makes the SEC even worse. I hate the SEC. I love that. It can only do good. No, I'm not going to say it can only do good. There's so much that could go wrong with it. But what do you think?
I agree. I mean, I pretty much echo what you're saying. I mean, USC has such a big brand, and I mean, it's a school that can afford to, use these resources. And I mean, there's other sports too, like basketball, baseball, a bunch of other sports as well. So they're also going to be getting, the benefits of this. And I think, like you said, I mean, every sport at USC, I think, is going to benefit from this in some capacity. I think the bigger ones, those 3 I mentioned the most, obviously, because those are the ones that are bringing in the most revenue.
Right.
But at the end of the day, football is a huge investment for USC, not just for the other sports, but for the school as a whole. Like the football at USC is a staple thing. And so they're going to put in hopefully as much money as they can. It's $20 million is the cap, I guess. So yeah, they should be spending to the cap or over if they can every year.
Not a real cap. It's not a real.
Yeah.
It's like fake money at this point. That's just what it is.
Monopoly.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But we're kind of going to wrap things up here. Leave us any other comments right before we head out. We'll answer those. Casey, any final thoughts on recruiting, USC's win total, any sorts of that stuff?
I mean, keep your eyes out. Booby Feaster, I think, is going to commit soon. You mentioned a few others that might have
Yankton, July 2nd.
Yeah, so it's only a few weeks away. And I think this class is so strong. Got to make it stronger though. Got to be able to sustain that. You might lose guys as the days go on, but you got to be able to keep those guys blue chips intact, right? So it's gonna be big.
Yeah. Well, if no one has anything else in the comments, we're gonna wrap things up here. Like I mentioned, Casey and I both have ridiculous 40-hour plus week schedules for our jobs this summer. So we're gonna do this show whenever we can. But once we get closer to the off season, in August, I'll say, we're gonna start getting going. So until then, however, unfortunately, inconsistent show times. But thank you, everybody. Have a good one and fight on.